Today I'd like to share with you 5 tips I learned from people who actually pass job interviews. Okay, tip number 1 would be the context of the interviewing business is super important to understand in order to have the right type of attitude throughout the process, right? So it's well understood that the interviewers can be quite unreliable, can even ghost you, but also on the other side, candidates are unreliable as well. So what happens here is that the best candidates I work with also have a tendency to ensure they are trustworthy in the process. Okay, how can you sell yourself as being trustworthy for the purpose of job interviews? I would agree it's not a straightforward thing to do, but some ideas here could be something on lines of maybe you could get some referrals, some people to refer you for the job. This is especially useful if you want to pass the early screening stages, or having worked in reputable places previously is not sufficient that you are a trustworthy person. So you should know, because the context of the interview business is one such that people are unreliable and not really trustworthy, right? Or if you're someone who has not worked for a high-performing business or reputable place previously, you should understand that trustworthiness is something that will play a significant role in the decision-making process. Right? Long story short, how can you sell yourself as someone who's trustworthy in the process, right? The second thing I like to share with you, a second tip, is that most high performers I work with are people who can handle stress extremely well. Okay, now if I had to give you some examples primarily from coaching, because that's where I see people, I understand people best, would be that lower performing candidates are less likely to be willing to role play or to have a hands-on approach to the interview prep process, while high performers, I've even had people said, Dan, let's do one more coaching sessions, 1 more hour, a 2-hour coaching session, so we can be able to cover more ground for these things, right? Or it's more often than you think for candidates to get sick or to ghost you from coaching sessions, right? Whereas high performing candidates would rather have them daily. Okay, so these sort of things are also indicators of stress. At least in my experience, right? So stress is also a big one. Can you handle stress? I bet you don't want to work with stressed out people if you put yourself in your interviewer's shoes, so to speak, right? Point number 3, and I'll just go quickly with this one. The entitlement problem is only getting worse these days, right? It still amazes me how I work with executives of banks who listen and follow my advice far more when compared to, say, software engineers, right? Won't insist on this one any further. Number 4 here, most high-performing candidates, very few exceptions again here, can outwork everyone else in the process. Not outsmart, but outwork, okay? Super important to understand that, especially in behavioral interviews, at the end of the day, it's who prepares the most, the ones who is most likely to perform best, except if you're half prepped, but that you would know more or less in the process. So people who can outwork everyone else can do it for the purpose of their upcoming interview. If you have this luxury, if you have 2 weeks, for instance, yes, you could do it, but it's also possible they worked hard to prepare their previous interviews 5 years ago. And they might have a story bank, they might have some basic interviewing skills, which they only have to polish up, so to speak. Okay, but keep in mind that outworking everyone else is another significant indicator of success with interviews in high-performing companies, right? And the 5th thing I like to share with you is that the best candidates I've worked with, some of them with some amazing, incredible CVs, never took success for granted. Okay? Even if we did 1 or 2 coaching sessions and they were pretty boring, just to confirm, they were as good as we both thought they would be, they never took it for granted. Right? And here I'd like to highlight a dangerous precedent here. That is not having to prep interviews previously because it didn't matter, because you knew the right people, and that's what mattered the most. I wish it would be the case, and I wish you'd be a great interviewer with a great interviewee without even you realizing. But in reality, you know, setting yourself this precedent of not having to interview well to get hired can be a detrimental factor to your interview prep. All right, so this is how people say, "Hey, yes, don't worry, it's just a formality. You know, I'm just going to shortcut the process and it's going to be all right." Right? My advice would be to always focus on taking these interviews rather seriously and to be outcome driven in your prep and do whatever it makes sense to you, so you optimize your chances of success. So I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.